welcome to Bone Wild, the show that takes you to the heart of wild India.
It takes you up close and personal to some of our most charismatic, magnificent and unique species. All of whom face challenges to their survival. Our forests and our wildlife is some of the greatest national treasures we have. Our wonderful wild landscapes and our wildlife really are our last bastions towards the coming challenge of climate change. It's up to you and me to ensure that it stays protected. It really is now or never. In 2013, a Right to Information document revealed that India was losing about 135 hectares of forest a day. The government of India might claim that forest cover has increased in the country in the last decade, but the truth is close to 60% of existing forests are degraded with little chance of recovery, and many of the newly planted areas are just that, plantations with no biodiversity and often non-indigenous species. Our scrublands and our wetlands and grasslands are worse off, having been classified as wastelands and given over to everything from agriculture to construction. Over half of our rivers are polluted, and most states have lost over half of their existing water bodies to illegal encroachments and construction. In the meantime, our population has grown to over 1.2 billion people. 2 people die a minute in India from air pollution, and close to 60% of our population does not even have access to safe drinking water. Nearly 2/3 of all villages that exist near forests depend on the forests for their livelihoods. In the meantime, the urban demand for coal, iron ore, steel, highways, bridges, dams, petroleum and natural gases is forcing governments to make snap decisions for quick profits. If we can't see how our disregard of the natural world around us is leading to a massive crisis, we are indeed in trouble. Our wilderness in India is the source of our clean air and water, and yet we treat it like it is less important than a tar road. Habitat loss is linked with biodiversity loss, which is linked with loss of human lives. If we fought to conserve our natural treasures, we are only securing our own future. For months, the Bone Wild team travelled to several locations in the country, bringing on-the-ground reports of several of our most endangered and vulnerable animals and habitats. To do this, we had the World Wildlife Fund for Nature India advise us on where to go and whom to contact. Their advice sometimes led us to places where other organizations and conservationists worked, and a lot of places where WWF themselves had people on the ground. We stand poised on the edge of a cliff, on the one side our immense gifts of megadiversity in India, and on the other the long drop into ecocide with our short-term outlook on gains and development. In the Anamalai Hills, shrouded in mists and rain, the lion-tailed macaque stands as a symbol of resilience in a landscape shredded by a massive historical loss of forests. The LTM's numbers crashed until just a few isolated troops were left trying to adapt to a new and challenging landscape. Their rainforest homes, now small patchworks amidst large tea and coffee estates and roads and dams and human habitations. Yet, while classified as endangered in the last decade, their numbers have stayed stable, with some populations learning to adjust to the more fragmented spaces. Arboreal monkeys now learning to be more terrestrial. This lion-tailed macaque is an old world monkey. They are meant to be arboreal, 90% of their time up in the treetops. In the wild, you'll have to trek for hours to even catch a glimpse of them way up in a tree. In most of these places here in Valparai, the old rainforests have been cut down. The areas become very, very fragmented. So the troops that are trapped in areas with smaller rainforest patches and bigger patches of either coffee estates or cardamom or tea have a problem, because they've changed their entire way of being, their entire behavior. They spend a lot of their time now on the ground. They spend a lot of their time raiding, and they've become used to people coming here and feeding them, and that also has changed their behavior. While slowly creating conflict as they look for food and raid homes, the monkeys are still regarded with affection, and people here in Valparai are trying to live with them in their backyards. On the highways leading up to these misty mountains, Nilgiri tar resting on the side of the roads. some of them grazing. Endangered animals, at one time they had vast grasslands between forest patches which supported them in large numbers. Today they navigate a very different landscape to get from one patch to another. A WWF survey and study puts their numbers at between 2,000 to 2,500. Increased tourism in these areas has also impacted these animals. Tourists bring with them bad behavior, feeding these wild creatures and habituating them. The LTMs now come forcefully to look for food, and the tar beg on the roadsides. But here the Nature Conservation Foundation is working towards habitat restoration, not by creating new habitats but by enriching existing degraded patches, by bringing back the original indigenous trees by planting.
In any restoration program, like the first step is to keep all the pieces. So we work to first protect what fragments there are, and they also help us to understand what species are found in the landscape. And with that understanding, we can then try and restore areas that are degraded.
I think the aim is to put them back on track. If they are very disturbed, put them back on a functional state where dispersal happens naturally, then animals start using those naturally so that we don't have to continue to keep planting forever.
The bigger challenge here is the elephants. As the hills are named for elephants, it is obvious that they are an intrinsic presence. It is our activity here that is more new. In order to help reduce conflict, the Nature Conservation Foundation has employed an innovative and excellent early warning system. An SMS alert goes out to a list of collated numbers the minute an elephant is spotted. Local cable stations carry the news on a ticker, and announcements are made on the local buses. The announcements are translated into the local language to help people understand. This enables people to become aware of where the animals are moving, avoiding accidental encounters. The Forest Department mobilizes the minute the elephants near human homes, helping in herding them away before damage is created. In Coimbatore city, the WWF India team is researching and studying elephant movement and behavior and herd distribution in order to come up with solutions to help.
We look at the conflict in different locations, and we generate scientific informations which are useful for the policy makers and which will be useful for the advocacy. And second is to look at the technologies available and piloting them in few locations and see how it is working, and then bringing in community in conflict management. And fourth is scientific informations generated through radio collaring of elephants, which will again be useful for the management of the conflict.
A WWF team also works in Assam in Sonitpur district, where the human-elephant encounters have become more common.
This possibility of getting this accident situation is going to be more and more.
Here too the team is working towards finding solutions. Both teams are also working with the local people and involving them in some of the solutions to make the system more organic. In India today, between 150 to 300 people are killed by elephants, and annually about 40 to 50 elephants die in just crop raiding and accidental encounters. Dozens of elephants also die due to collision with trains. They are our national heritage animal, and nearly 70% of them have no real habitat left, most of their movements through fragmented forests.
The thrust which goes for tiger conservation is not there for conserving elephants. So a lot needs to be done. Elephants are also an animal where local people have a lot of connect. That connect needs to be strengthened. If people are losing crops, some amount of ex gratia paid to them in a timely manner. If a life is lost, then that needs to be addressed. If elephants are dying on railway tracks, that needs to be addressed at an appropriate level.
Across India, the human-animal interface is growing, and the almost daily encounters now in some places are putting stress on the traditional tolerance that people have always shown in their willingness to share spaces with the wildlife. In fact, it is this fact that without the bedrock of reverence and understanding of nature and wildlife in India, we would have lost much more than we still have today. Leopards across India today share spaces with people. In some areas like the mountains of Garhwal, this equation has turned sour, with many people killed by leopards and many leopards shot for perceived killings. In Mumbai, an initiative started by Dr. Vidya Atreya, India's leopard expert, with officers of Sanjay Gandhi National Park, scientists and regular citizens of Mumbai to increase awareness of leopard behavior and do's and don'ts by the public, has helped reduce the encounters with leopards from turning into conflict.